over the past few years, a lot of you have come to know and love the Uncle Tom docu franchise. That is Uncle Tom 1, which was released in 2020, and Uncle Tom 2, which was released in 2022. And I would imagine that the attraction that is gained is probably due to the fact that it was released in this kind of post-2020 world. That is to say that in the year of 2020, a lot of the woke stuff that's been going on for a very long time in the West was being found out. And people began to see through the ruse as it relates to our medical and pharmaceutical industry, as it relates to the history that we've been taught in schools, as it relates to the role of the government and how it's been long expanding its role through social justice movements. And so it seems that Uncle Tom was released at just the right time. It was just a few weeks after the death of George Floyd, and we were in a lockdown year. 2 years later, we released Uncle Tom 2. Now, those of you who were waiting for the release of Uncle Tom 2 after you found out that that was a thing, were probably wondering, well, what is there left to talk about? I mean, Uncle Tom 1 was about Black Conservatism 101. It was basically giving voice to a contingent of Black voters and thinkers who have long been suppressed by the mainstream media in terms of their reach, in terms of what they stand for. And here at long last was a film that was dedicated to the oral history of the American Black conservative. And so where do you go from there?
When Black people become serious about the revolutionary struggle that they are caught up in, whether they recognize it or not, when they begin to go down and knock off...
I was honored to come on to Malone Pictures, the team that produced Uncle Tom. And I was honored to come on as a producer, as a writer, as an on-camera cast member, and a researcher for part 2. And so it took a kind of slightly different direction. What Martin Luther King gives us is that image.
The thing I want you to understand is this.
But it's preaching a different message.
And it didn't cost the nation 1 penny to integrate lunch counters.
While Uncle Tom 1 favored and lauded the civil rights movement and Dr. King in particular, Uncle Tom 2 took a slightly different approach. It began to turn over stones and tip over sacred cows that you're not supposed to tip over.
Now we are dealing with issues that cannot be solved without the nation spending billions of dollars and undergoing a radical redistribution of economic power.
We left Uncle Tom 2 on a bit of a cliffhanger. We'll get into that next. And we understand that that was a bold decision, and that is to bring into question the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We wanted to prepare the cast members for what we were cooking up, and so we made the decision to send a private link to all of the cast members. And most of the feedback that we got was overwhelmingly positive. But there were a few who didn't quite like the direction that we were going. One of those people were Dr. Carol Swain. She and I had a number of private conversations, and she was very displeased with the fact that we were questioning King, that we were questioning his legacy. And she even said to me that if we were to do a part 3, she has no interest in playing a role in it. She further stated that she would be of little help in promoting Uncle Tom 2. On the night of the big premiere, after the credits rolled, we, the cast members, went to the front of the auditorium to address the crowd, and she was one of the first cast members to speak. And she said in so many words that she was displeased with the direction that we went with the film.
And religious lives.
But something would end up gradually shifting for Dr. Carol Swain over the course of the following years. Since the night of the premiere, she's invited me to speak at 2 events in Nashville, Tennessee for her nonprofit. She's come out and publicly supported my upcoming MLK Project. And not only that, she agreed to be in the MLK Project. I wanted to know why the shift, what happened, what transpired between then and now. Well, I got the opportunity to go up to Nashville, Tennessee once again and sit down with Carol and ask her those questions. We talked about a number of things, and I think we had a very good conversation. We had an even better conversation after the camera stopped rolling, and I'm sad that you don't get to see that. But I think what we have here is pretty substantive.
1, 2, 3, testing 1, 2, 3.
One of the things I would like to say before you watch it is that for those of you who are still on the fence about what the civil rights movement was really all about and what was really at play, I think that this interview is for you. What we're contending with is decades of hard indoctrination, which has made Dr. King out to be a great moral leader. We have a national holiday that honors him and recognizes him. He's enshrined in the curriculum of American schools, be they public, private, or even homeschools. He's enshrined also in pop culture. You see him being referenced in movies and songs. And so the propaganda surrounding King is very pervasive. And here we are making a docuseries that seeks to challenge that narrative. Facts don't lie. And in our docuseries, we display the facts. And I think that is why Dr. Carol Swain, being the researcher that she is, finally came around to where she is now. Also, just one quick housekeeping item so there's no confusion. Throughout my interview with Carol, you'll hear her and I talk about and refer to Uncle Tom 2, but you'll also hear her refer to, quote unquote, your project or your film. Understand that when she says your film, she's referring not to Uncle Tom 2, but to the upcoming, not yet released MLK Project. Just wanted to make that distinction so there's no confusion. Also, after the interview, stay tuned for a little surprise. I recently gave a speech in Nashville, Tennessee, and Carol Swain showed up to the event, and she stood up during the Q&A and had some kind words to say. So, without further ado, I hope you all enjoy my interview with Dr. Carol Swain. Thank you.
I saw the early clips of Uncle Tom 2, and I offered feedback because I did have a concern about what I saw as the beginning of a takedown of Dr. King. And I felt that the timing was inappropriate. It was factual. There was many of us who have studied history or political science, we knew of the Marxist influence in the civil rights movement. So that was well known. I've never felt that they defined the movement. When I saw Uncle Tom 2, before it was released, I was very concerned that if you take down King, like what's left? Because he was seen as this bigger than life figure that brought us all together. And his quote about judging people by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin, and longing for that day, when the children of different races would come together and play together and pray together and all of these things. It was just so beautiful that I did not want to see that diminished in any way.
You and I had some conversations in private leading up to the release, leading up to the premiere. And you gave me a lot to think about. And if I can remember correctly, it was pertaining to the way that the film ended.
Yes.
You thought it should end on a positive note, as opposed to where we left it, where it was kind of a bit of a cliffhanger, and we'll get to that.
I hated it. And I'll tell you why I hated it is that if you read my books like Be the People, most of my books end with basically what you can do or where do you go next. And I just think that people need direction. They need to know what they can do next. And that for that film that had so many positives to end on this thing about King, I just felt like it was a downer and that was not going to be good for the audience. And I'm thinking in terms of the people that will be influenced by films. Films are powerful. The left, they have always known this. And consequently, they've used television, film, and plays to change culture. I think that we need to get out truth about our nation and about our culture but we need to do it in a way so that when you watch the film or you go to the play or you follow the sitcom, that you come away with some values. And with that film, I just think that the people watching it, that could have been a better ending. I don't know what the better ending should have been, but I think that even with the reach of Uncle Tom 2, that it would have reached more people had it been more positive in the conclusion.
With it teasing like more information to come, and kind of being like a prequel to a sequel, even with that, you still thought it didn't end appropriately?
I think that I used to do a lot of the network television where I was on the news shows, such as Hannity, and they would always tease the next show. I think with the film, that's going to be, there's going to be years probably before the sequel comes out.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't use a teaser in the same way. And I'm speaking not as a person that knows a whole lot about film. I know what I like and I know what I think that people need. And I think, if I were the person that was making the final decisions about that film, I would have found a different way to say what you were trying to say as far as the next film will be about lies my teacher told me about the civil rights movement, because there are a lot of lies, and it's disheartening to see this and to know this, that we've been played like a piano, but it was for a noble cause. And so you think about the left, they believe the ends justify the means. And so they've had this noble lie that they have been spreading, and that's disheartening.
Yeah.
And so even for me, I had to go through a process because I know that you're sincere, you're a man of faith, and you're doing a bold thing. And people see me as this courageous woman, Carol Swain. She's not afraid of anything. I was afraid of that in the sense that I did not think that this was something that the country needed or that they could handle.
So since the release of Uncle Tom 2 in 2022, we have since seen a number of people with very large platforms come out and ask questions about King, do reports on what the civil rights movement was all about. I know Charlie Kirk did something early 2025. We've seen people like Vince Everett Ellison come to prominence. I mean, he had already written books and things of this nature, but it seems like after the release of Uncle Tom 2, he got access to a wider audience. And do you think that there was any silver lining in the release of Uncle Tom 2 in terms of...
I'm not saying that it was wrong to release Uncle Tom 2. I'm just saying that had it had a more positive, different ending, I think you could have reached more people. And when I left the forum for the premiere, when I left the premiere of the film, I left, feeling like, hey, this is not something that I want to be too involved in promoting. And, maybe I made a mistake, but I just couldn't be comfortable with the ending. And I think that there are a lot of people, maybe they're all old people like me, that would have come away feeling the same thing. So I think that you could have reached more people with Uncle Tom 2. And when you tell me that there are more people interested in King, well, yeah, because his papers have been released, and there are a lot of people, we've known that he plagiarized his PhD thesis and some of his speeches. That's been known for years and it's been suppressed. I think that there's an interest in King and that this is the right time for you to do your film and that the truth needs to come out. And so I'm willing to admit that I was partially wrong, but I'm always right. I just think the timing was not right.
Understood.
And hopefully the timing for this new film, it's the right time because we're tired of lies. We don't want to be lied to anymore. This is a time where we need truth and we need to build on that and try to go back to an era that I believe existed when we had stronger families. We had stronger Black families, stronger white families, and we had people that really cared about our country. I think we lost that through the false narratives that were put out concerning the civil rights movement. The other thing I think is important that you do in the film is when you discuss how the various, Marxist, socialist people were planning this, and so much of it was scripted, such as Bull Connor. The man didn't know what was coming. Like he's like your Uncle Archie, and all of a sudden these slicksters, I'm sure that's how they seemed to him, like he played totally into the role that enabled the media to do what they did with George Floyd and Trayvon Martin, whatever thing that they want to play up at a particular time. Matthew Shepard, for example, because we now know that Matthew Shepard's murder was not a murder that was done because he was a member of the LGBTQ community. It was not what we thought it was, but most people will never know that.
Right. That's a good point. So I think we kind of got ahead. So you talked about after the premiere, you went away feeling the way that you felt. So what kind of thoughts were going through your mind as you were at the theater watching the premiere? I think you maybe already
There were a couple of things, and I don't know. You ready for this?
Yes, go ahead.
There were other women in the film,
Mhm.
but mostly I felt that they were women that were part of the footage. That were speaking, and so this is more like historical
Julia Brown.
quotes.
Mm-hmm.
But I noticed at the premiere that it struck me as, hey, this is a male flick. And I'm I was the only woman, I believe, that was interviewed for that. And I know that it wasn't because she didn't try, but for some reason, some of the conservative voices that you may have thought would have been speaking were not there. And they may have made a decision that they didn't want to participate with Uncle Tom 2. I don't know how many people knew that it was going to go in the direction it did as far as the conclusion. But I think what you did was bold, that it was needed, and that older people like me need to get out of the way and let young people do their thing. And so, yes.
Well, I think we do need older people, though, especially since older people were there to witness a lot of the things that we're talking about. And I remember whenever you and I were having a conversation privately, one of the things that you said is, and I didn't take this the wrong way or anything like that, but I distinctly remember you said something to the effect of, Chad, you're just now finding these things out. And you're a young man. I've been knowing these things.
I lived them.
Yeah, I lived them.
I lived the civil rights movement. I am the civil rights movement. I was born in 1954. Yeah, I had a front row seat to history.
Right. And so you said something to the effect of, like, you're now on this crusade to reveal all this information because you're learning it. It's so new to you. But you need to be careful about not being reckless in your approach because you can turn off a lot of people. And King is one of the few people who unites the right and the left. If you get rid of him, who then do you have? And I remember like mulling that over for months after you said that. And I realized, and I think you would share in this opinion, that Christ is the ultimate unifier. And what we've done as a society is we've elevated King to that place. Whether we know it or not. And I don't think you did this, but I think a lot of us has. There's this video that went viral of this little girl, and she's sleepy and disoriented, this little white girl. You may have seen this video, but she's asked, what did y'all learn about at school today? She said, Martin Luther King. And then the mother said, well, who was Martin Luther King? He died for our sins.
I did see that.
We could laugh about that, but unfortunately, that's like a sad commentary on our society, is that we elevate King to this place of like, oh yeah, he's the exemplar of what race relations ought to look at. Well, what about the Sermon on the Mount? Christ talked about being a peacemaker. He talked about, loving your neighbor as yourself. He's the one that we should look to,
well, of course,
as an example of how we ought to treat our brothers and sisters.
And I think that you're working through and coming to that conclusion is so powerful, because I was thinking in terms of leaders or historical leaders. I was thinking in terms of human beings, not in terms of Christ, who is the solution. And the Bible talks about, that the heaven is going to include people from every nation, tribe, and tongue. And, there is no race, there is no ethnicity, there is no nationality in Christ, that we all one. And so, yes, and I've always felt that the church made a serious mistake. And I'm a Southern Baptist now, and Southern Baptists in particular, when they started looking to the world's theories to solve race problems, the racial and ethnic problems, we had the solution. We should be leading people forward together as opposed to behaving like the world and echoing its rhetoric and using its language of social justice.
Hmm. You had recently went to a speech that I gave in Nashville at a conference. And after I did my presentation and opened it up for questions, one of I think it was the first comment that came from the audience was someone who said something to the effect of, man, you just completely changed my mind on this and turned my world upside down. And it's interesting because, and I'm sure you've had the same experience where you share information that somebody didn't know before, and you're able to support it with the facts and with the receipts, and people who are willing to listen say, wow, like I never really thought about that. You've completely opened me up. To the extent that we see that kind of feedback, I guess my question is, I had a different question, but I'll just ask you a simpler question is, what goes through your mind when you see that kind of feedback?
I wish your film could be seen by all the people that need to see such a film. And so what goes through my mind is that he happened to be in the audience at that place. He was exposed to the well-documented truths that you present. That's not filtered, through academia or it's not suppressed. It's the raw footage. I'm not sure that your message will reach the people that need it most. And so my hope is that it will reach people. And when they are exposed to truth, they will grapple. People will feel uncomfortable for a while, but I think good will come out of it because good always follows truth.
Mm-hmm. And apparently there were some people in the audience that didn't exactly receive the information that was presented.
I was told that there was a high school student that was very disturbed by the takedown of Dr. King as he saw it. And I assumed that this is a young person that he's white. There's always that white guilt element, even if you're in a conservative environment. This was a student that had been classically educated. And so King has been put on such a pedestal. Again, you take away King and the young man, who's left? What's left? Because we're looking for human beings to fill that. And so who's the next leader? And another thing that you've done, and I think is interesting, and I hope you can do more of it, is to elevate some of those true Black leaders that were making a difference, that were either canceled or their messages did not get out. Mm-hmm. And so there's an opportunity to show that there's always been, good people on both sides. They were not Marxists, that were working together, that were sincere, that were making a difference. More of that and less of some of the other stuff we get.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important because it's like, I think one of the reasons why King is so glorified today, I mean, growing up, I was born in 1990, and in our Texas schools, our primary and secondary schools, I mean, it was the same thing every Black History Month. You learned all this history, and I now realize as an adult that it wasn't Black history, it was Marxist history, with Black faces. But you had, in this conservative red town in Texas, us learning this Marxist history under the guise of Black history. And we're told that, King was a hero, but it was always against this backdrop of just deep oppression and sundown towns and lynching and all the things. And so you're learning about this kind of contrast between the way things were and the resilience of these activists who gave us liberation, so to speak. And so because you're taught about it in those tones and in those terms, it's difficult to deny the necessity of someone like a King.
Well, when you're talking about how you were educated in Texas in a conservative town, the university professors, for the most part, they had been, quote, progressives. And so the narrative that they put forth in textbooks and in the books that I read in college, of course, you're going to believe that all of it was negative, all of it was oppression. You don't learn about the accomplishments of the Black men and women who came out of slavery. Bob Woodson talks about the ones that became millionaires, that were entrepreneurs, that the success, there was a lot of Black success coming from that group that emerged from slavery, that took advantage of opportunities.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like, because I talked about in the speech about Black Wall Street and the story after the story.
That definitely needs to get out. And I don't know if it needs to be in op-ed form or one of those 5 to 10 minute films. If you can put in the documentation about the journalist that was also part of the Marxism and the various people, how they staged that, and they were willing to sacrifice a man's life. Well, that was a lynching, right?
Yeah, well, Dick Rowland was never actually lynched, and that's another part of the story where the white sheriff protected Dick Rowland and didn't allow the white mob to get access to him. So he went on to live a life without ever being.
Well, I mean, you could write an op-ed piece, "The True Story of Black Wall Street," or we could do it. I could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are parts of breaking down these lies that people have been taught that at some point need to be broken out. The true Rosa Parks story.
The point in telling the story about Black Wall Street was because I've noticed that to the extent that you have, and even Joe Biden did this when he was in office, but to the extent that you have Black academicians and the intellectual progressive ilk of the Black contingent and politicians, to the extent that they talk about Black Wall Street, they always leave it at, and then it was burned down. And then that's the end of the story. And they use it as a means to say, capitalism doesn't work for Black Americans because every time we try to go the capitalistic route, white people are going to burn it down. See, look what they did at Black Wall Street. So that's why it was important to tell the story after the story, what ended up happening after all of the dust settled.
But what I'm telling you, as far as educating the public, some of these need to be told in short film clips, maybe 10 minutes, but they need to be told.
But it goes back to your point about elevating those stories that aren't told, about Joseph H. Jackson and how he bought the 400 acres of land in Tennessee. Like, these are stories that I think effectively counteract the prevailing victim narrative that we get. And I don't think there's been a lot of people who've done that. Like, sure, we know about.
I don't think they have done it, and I kind of think God has raised you up and given you special talent, and so there are lots of things that you can do that I believe would be beneficial for our country.
Yeah. So I guess the last question I wanted to ask you was, after the premiere of Uncle Tom 2, Justin, who's the director, invited all the cast members to the front, and you were the first person to speak after people had just watched it, being the lady and all, ladies first. Do you remember the comments?
I don't remember what I said, but I knew that I was not happy, and I was with at the time she was a university professor who was white. She's older than I am, and she said that the film embarrassed her about white people or for white people, because she said that the film let white people off too easily, and she's a conservative.
Interesting. You mind elaborating on that?
Well, it's nothing. She attended the premiere with me. She's a Texan, and she said while we were sitting there after the film that it embarrassed her as a white person because she felt like the film let white people off too easily. That was all.
So I wonder if
she didn't. I think another way to say it is maybe she didn't think it was as balanced as it could have been, because terrible things did happen. And even today, with me supporting you fully, I still believe that there were a lot of positives that came out of the civil rights movement, civil rights legislation, and that the success that I've had as a scholar, and who I am today was aided by the fact that there were opportunities and people looking for talented minorities, and an opportunity for me to get my foot in the door and distinguish myself. And maybe I could have been successful had there not been a successful civil rights movement. We would never know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the trouble that I have with your professor friend, her comments, and of course, we're all free to have our own.
And she's a conservative, and she's probably about 3 or 4 years older now.
Got you. But the issue, because I've heard similar things said by other white people, but for me, the trouble that I have with that is that what you see on the left is so much emphasis on white supremacy and white people and oppression on the part of whites, and blacks are often given a pass. They get it on the left, and they also get it on the right. They even get it from black conservatives. A lot of what I see coming from black conservatives, I'm deeply ashamed of, in terms of placating the kind of smug disposition that we have in black culture. And black culture, I think we could all agree, is not in the greatest shape.
No, it's
and
not.
The only way to turn it around is by being honest.
Well, here's something.
By looking in the mirror and being honest. And so, like, I feel like with Uncle Tom too, and I'm not saying it was a perfect film, it at the very least challenged a lot of the pathology that we see in black culture.
It did.
And if you call that like letting white people off the hook, well, what does white people have to do with the fact that our culture is broken?
Well, I mean, it's certainly broken now. It's like in the toilet. What about, this is not maybe that film, but maybe something we can do is to show that black people in the 60s were not the only poor people, that there were white people oppressed, white people in poverty. And when I was at the community college getting my first degree, a work study student, I worked alongside, poor people, and some of them were white people, and they were just like me. They wanted opportunities for their children too. And I have never felt the way about race as other black people around me. I've always had sympathy for that poor white male in Appalachia because that could have been me. And I felt like if I were white and affirmative action and those programs existed, I might be tempted to check the box. And there's something called ethnic fraud. Elizabeth Warren knows all about ethnic fraud. That a lot of people over the years have checked the box. And some have been caught and some have not been caught because we don't have ethnic police. We did not, during the affirmative action era, to go home with people to see if they were who they said they were. But I have always had more sympathy for hardworking poor people and believed that if you were going to have programs like affirmative action, that it needed to be on a race-neutral basis. And so that's a feeling I've always had. And so that's my take on that. And I think that in the film, to the extent that you could show, and I don't remember exactly, white people and black people working alongside each other under the similar conditions, or the poverty and the struggle of poor whites, which is very similar to the struggle of blacks. And in some ways, the race issue was created when really there's been an issue that, and I guess I'm borrowing from Marxists and sociologists, that it's been more like social class and people that may have been trapped in certain socioeconomic levels, that's been the real problem, not race. We made race an issue.
It's interesting because I didn't really get to delve as deep into it as I would have liked to during the speech. But when it came to Joseph H. Jackson buying the 400 acres of land, a lot of black sharecroppers were planning to protest because they believed that they were being trapped by white people as sharecroppers, that they had no way up and out. But as it turns out, there were white sharecroppers too.
Yes.
And a lot of this was done by the government, who was like, a lot of the race tension piece of it was done by the government because, and we give the receipts and show the evidence of this in the film, but the government was running propaganda trying to pit the landlord against the sharecropper.
Well, I have this quote in my book, Black Faces, Black Interests.
Mhm.
The President Jackson's quote about it basically was the first expression of reverse discrimination.
Mhm.
And I guess that had to do with the fact that there were, as you say, there were white sharecroppers.
Mhm.
I don't know if I could run upstairs and get the book. I don't know if you'd be interested in me reading it. It doesn't fit into what you're doing.
Mhm.
But now that in the context of looking at how the Marxists had a strategy of pitting one group against another, Jackson's position against the 40 acres and a mule and the Freedmen's Bureau makes more sense.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. The reason why it's important to understand the government was complicit in trying to pit the landlord against the sharecropper,
But also the poor whites against the poor
against
blacks
the poor blacks.
that had worked alongside each other.
Right. The idea was to so enrage all sides to call for more federal regulatory solution
Right.
to the issues. Whereas Joseph H. Jackson, the Negro pastor, said, "Well, no, let us not do that. Let us buy this
I mean, that was
land.
brilliant.
You can work it for free,
Right.
and sell your crops, pocket your money, and buy your own farmland." These were practical solutions to problems that didn't involve, taking up a picket sign and protesting the government.
Yes.
And so I think those are stories that need to be told, but it also, I think it foils the plans of the federal government to benefit in some way from this turmoil and friction and division,
Right.
And
And
so like this idea, and the reason I bring that up is because you used the term earlier of being trapped, and a lot of people feeling trapped, not based on race, but based on poverty or income. And my question is, who's doing the trapping?
was
And
clearly the government.
are there practical solutions to that trap?
But I mean, I have seen just so much over the course of my life. And when I was a Democrat, there was so much activism around the disenfranchisement of Black men through felonies.
Mm-hmm.
So many Black men, especially in Florida, had committed a felony. And instead of, just focusing on it, the same law applied to whites too. Just focus on within your state. If you want to change the law, focus on changing the law. It didn't have to be racialized, but they racialized it. And then there's not many rich people on death row because you can buy reasonable doubt.
Right.
And so a lot of the things, just so many things that the Black Caucus racialized,
Mm-hmm.
they could have gotten more support because it was a problem affecting more people than Black people. It didn't have to be racialized. You could actually get more support across the aisle by taking the racial element out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's always been that go-to.
Yeah. I think, I know I said I was going to ask you the last question like 2 or 3 questions ago, but I promise this is going to be the last question. So, because you got me thinking, I see from people like Tavis Smiley and Coleman Hughes and John McWhorter and others who are basically saying that we need to, well, not so much Tavis Smiley, but the others are saying that we need to stop focusing on race. We need to begin to adopt King's vision of a colorblind society and focus instead on class, because there's class issues. And whether they realize it or not, they're kind of playing into the hands of Marxist rhetoric, Marxist ideology by suggesting that policies, uplifting policies, should be predicated on a lack of proper wealth distribution, and these policies need to focus on people who are impoverished and lifting them up versus, having race-based societies. I personally don't believe that that is the solution, because what it does is it de-incentivizes conventional means of becoming successful,
Right.
of using practical means so it's counterproductive. And I don't know that these men really see.
Well, they're more affluent. They don't, and they're talking to white people. There are a lot of Black people among the conservatives as well as the progressives that seem to be paid to dance in a particular kind of way. And what I think is that for Black people to rise, that they have to focus on changing the culture from within. and that a lot of bad decisions have been made. And when I think about my own success, people ask me about that. I did what I had to do. I didn't have a formula, and there were some times that I worked 2 jobs, but I did what I had to do to support my family, and I was not the personality that could have survived on welfare. That's not me. And I think that they have disincentivized hard work or even telling people the way out of poverty, because it's so beneficial for some groups and causes to keep people entrapped in poverty. And so they have made it very easy for people to go to the projects and decide that they don't want to work too hard. They don't want to work so hard that they raise your rent so much that you have to move. And so people are very concerned about not making too much money. And they keep themselves, at a certain lower socioeconomic status. And I notice among people that choose to live that way, they know where all the good free stuff is.
Any final words that you want to part us with?
Come up with a conclusion, an ending of the film that's really, this is the road forward. And I think the Holy Spirit will give it to you. And it could be that Christ is the unifier. We can all come together. But whatever that is, that has to be the most powerful thing, that when you leave the film, you have hope, because you know that it wasn't King. That was just a distraction, just a footnote. But this is the solution. This is what's going to bring us together. This is the true Christ. There's freedom in Christ. He's the true liberator. So that's my parting words.
Awesome. Well, thank you for this interview.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you for your hospitality as well. I appreciate it.
And you see the same tactics being carried out today, George Floyd, all of that. And the reason I'm standing up here today is because Chad can't say these things, or he hasn't. The tremendous cost that he has paid just to get this far. And I can tell you that after Uncle Tom 2, I was in Uncle Tom 1, Uncle Tom 2, most, if not all, the Black conservatives my age were against this project. And we felt that, King was all we had to bring us together. We knew he had all of these flaws, but is this the right time to reveal this information? And I realized at some point that for me, I was one of the ones that talked Chad into delay the project some, is that it was my own fear as far as what happens, if you take away King. But I came to the realization that truth, we need truth. And it's going to be some growing pains, and I don't know what will happen if the bill actually gets out, in the sense that there's so many people trying to suppress it already, and that Chad doesn't have the kind of support that he needs. And so if you believe in truth and you want to help Chad to be able to make this truth available to the world, then he needs your support. Thank you.
Thank you all.
I have a dream.
If you found out, allegedly, that Martin Luther King Jr. was involved in some wild, freaky that seems like every other you know.
That my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
Would it change how you see him?
Nope.
No.
Not at all.
He got hit in the head with a rock. Nigga singing We Shall Overcome.
I have a dream today.
It don't get any better. He said he deserves some yeah, he deserves whatever he wants. He fought for us.
The moral leader of our nation.
Our leader, Dr. King.
Our leader, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Dr. King was our leader.
It's he who controls the narrative of the past, controls the policies of the present, and the conditions of the future.
Tear gas, rubber bullets, mostly peaceful protests.
If Dr. King was about judging people by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin, should we judge King by the content of his character?
Dr. King, it's been alleged that you have been slow to sever your ties with alleged communists.
Stanley Levison, yeah, he's always in his ear.
I mean, he wrote everything that MLK said publicly.
Always in his ear.
He rejected the deity of Christ, the resurrection, the virgin birth. He rejected a literal hell.
Can we trust someone that appears to be faithful to a movement
but he's not faithful to his family.
King's relationship with the fundamental gospel of the Bible is absolutely non-existent.
Martin Luther King is the founding father, or the kind of shifting, if you will, into America 2.0. And my question for anybody is, are we better for it?